We know that one of the most pressing issues impacting the entire planet is climate chaos, and it's completely man-made as a result of capitalism. And we also know that Indigenous people have all of the solutions, right, to this issue, right, that's impacting us. And we also know that Indigenous people have to lead, right, in order to ensure that our climate is protected. And so we are so happy to welcome these amazing women to chat with us a little bit about climate justice and the future that we can envision if Native people are leading. So please welcome Jade Begay from Indian Collective.
Hi everyone, welcome. Samu, I'm Jade Begay. I am the Climate Justice Campaign Director at Indian Collective. I'm Tesuque and Pueblo and Diné. She, her pronouns, if that's helpful. And I get to moderate this panel this morning, and thank you so much for making it. I know it was a late night for some of y'all. So thanks for rallying up and getting over here this morning. I'm just gonna call on our panelists to come up on stage. So Janene and Jennifer, please come on up. Good morning.
All right.
Well, I got to do a mini intro and would love to just hear both of you introduce yourselves. If you could just share, your names and where you're from and how you come to this work of climate justice, environmental justice, and what you're doing in your work right now.
Well, I'll go first. Osio Oganali, Danjon Shike, Ashishiteke, Jennifer Muskrat Velarde Shiji, Zizgan Nishli, Dahoshtayin Nishli. My name is Jennifer Muskrat Velarde. Greetings, hello my friends, greetings my relatives and my family. I am from the mountain people of those who first collectively emerged, known today as the Jicarilla Apache through my mothers, and I am Cherokee on my father's. And as both are matrilineal and matrilocal, I belong to my mother's people of the Jicarilla Apache Nation here in northern New Mexico. I am so thrilled to be joining all of you, and I do realize last night sounded like a lot of fun. So I'm just thrilled to be here at the 100th anniversary of Santa Fe Indian Market and to be here at Illuminative and such a powerful organization and all of you today. I'm so thankful for all of the incredible artists that we see. And I'm just really excited to talk with you all about climate justice and future collaborations. So, thank you so much for having me. And I'll turn it over to my sister, my longtime sister, Janene Yazzie of Diné.
Thank you. Fun fact, Jen and I met when we were 14 years old, going to school at Native American Prep School in Rome, New Mexico, and so she knows all my secrets. So, real sister right here.
Yes, and never tell it either. I got that Apache loyalty.
She can't she didn't she Janene Yazzie and she Tina Janene Shlento Toruchini Bashishchin. For my relatives that are in the audience, wanted to introduce according to my relations. I'm from a small community called Tesuque, also known as Lupton, Arizona. So I grew up in communities that were dissected by multiple borders. The southern border of the Navajo Nation, the Arizona-New Mexico border. So when people ask me where I'm from, I hate picking states. I choose New Mexico, but really I'm from the ancestral territories of the Diné people, which is, across the Four Corners region. I am the Southwest Regional Director for Indian Collective, a position that I started just recently in March. And it's a very exciting role to really strategize and think through how to more strategically deploy Indian Collective's phenomenal network of resources and mechanisms in a more strategic way to build power here in the greater Southwest. And as part of that role, one of the things I was allowed to do was define what the Southwest means. I'm sure we all know Southwest means very many different things, but it is a big region. And so the way that I defined it was based on colonial relationships and based on historical relationships between our tribes and our peoples who have long been connected by our mountains and our water systems. And so really excited to be here to talk more about our work and how we're bringing together both understanding what's been emerging in terms of research around climate issues, man-made climate change, climate injustices, but also the role of our people in leading the future solutions and pathways and approaches to really achieving a truly just and sustainable world. If you had.
Thank you both, and yeah, just acknowledging this is a kind of Indian heavy panel with myself and Janene, both from the organization, but we may have someone joining us, Phoebe Swina, who is actually from Cochiti, so just fair warning, there might be another guest joining us. So we are in the context of Indian Market, which is a hub for creativity and ingenuity or indigenuity. I've heard a spin on that word before. And you know, when we talk about climate justice, so often we hear about the fear and the danger and the challenge that we're in, which is so real, and we need to be talking about that. That's important. But since we're here and there's so much abundance of creativity around us, I want to focus on the radical imagination that exists in our communities for surviving and thriving through the climate crisis. So I would love to hear from both of you. What are solutions that are Indigenous-led, that are giving you both hope and courage and yeah, just like tenacity to face what we're facing right now?
I think that's a wonderful question, Jade and Jade. When I think of what excites me, I really have to look at all of you. I have to look at where we have come in Indian country today. And I would just like to take a moment to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Indian Market. Can we just get a round of applause for that? And I look around at the incredible artists that we have throughout Indian country and throughout Turtle Island. It's expressive in our regalia, it's expressive in our fashion, it's expressive in our film. I have to give a shout out to even all of our artists in film and photography. The works of Cara Romero, which we have here today, are just telling. And it gets to the heart of what is art. And art at its core is expressing a concept. It's expressing the human experience. And I just want to celebrate each and every one of you for even being a part of that. In any way, shape, or form, if it be on a local level, of just even selling your art to your communities. We are each part of that. And as artists, we have a sacred duty in many ways to speak to the issues that are happening in our communities. One such example that holds a dear heart is a fellow tribalsman, Carson Vicente, and his work of Not Forgotten. I had my sister cousin leave us far too soon from running out of gas. We live in a very, very rural place, and nobody stopped. And when I look at that painting, and I see her in her deshbali, and this goes for all of it, when we see ourselves impregnated in that imagery, you are each moving the soul. The people that see your work, you are touching them. And I want to encourage, as our duty, as artisans, not only of the earth through our micaceous pottery. Jicarilla Apache potter Sheldon Nunez Velarde is a wonderful example. These are things that are taken from the earth. They are representing our landscapes, our people, and our ways. And we need to continue to support in that. And our artists I call as well on for voting. Help with voting. You know, here on the Jicarilla Apache Nation, we had one of the lowest voter turnout of only 39%. That is far below the U.S. national average. I know Navajo Nation had theirs as well with a similar number of 39%. And illuminative and organizations like Indian Collective that are taking a focus in changing these policies, in changing the narrative and expressing the narrative. It's within all of our eyes, it's within all of our hands, and it's within all of our creativity to think of solutions that are indigenous based, no matter where you are on Turtle Island. And as the Grants and Fiscal Coordinator for the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance, I gain a lot of hope from the communities I serve, especially to see the revitalization of our traditional seed saving practices and the renewal that we are seeing. The narrative has changed even before I came into existence. And I would like to take a moment to acknowledge all of those that have passed. I would like to acknowledge the 95% of the Americas that were also wiped out by diseases introduced. They are no longer here, but we remember them. And we continue into the future. And when I think about things that excite me, I gotta tell you, I am most excited about hemp. Yes. Hemp is an indigenous plant to the Americas, and it is the strongest fiber known to man. There is nothing that hemp cannot make or create that petrochemicals do not. And we need to start working, we need to start advocating, and we need to start supporting. We have a lot of indigenous farmers, for instance, Be Hempful, here in New Mexico, growing ancestral seeds. You know, we have it happening up in the Dakotas. And we need to focus our energy on engineering within our communities, using the local knowledge, the relationships, as Janene had spoken, the kinships. When we even use the word Pueblo, Pueblo for us is understood as people. When you go down even to Mexico, you'll often see that. Por el pueblo. What it means is the people's will. And we need to start organizing, and we need to keep the people's will.
Woo! All right, John. Yeah, no, along the same lines, I think this is one of the questions that I usually get the most whenever I'm talking about the issues that our peoples are facing, either for my nation specifically or indigenous peoples as a whole. Oh, yes, we got our...
Yes,
we are complete. So I'll go ahead and finish answering, then we'll let you introduce yourself. Okay. I don't want to be rude, I'm going to acknowledge you. And, you know, when I, talk about like the legacies of environmental contamination, the systemic injustices, the historical trauma that continues to get inherited, the cycles of violence that has been introduced to our communities, the way heteropatriarchy has destroyed traditional structures, and then on top of that, all of the threats that we're facing, fighting against uranium mining, trying to transition our communities, trying to create just economies. A lot of the non-native people always are just like, how do you have hope? And I'm like, how could I not? Like, in the midst of all of this, like in the midst of everything that we're fighting, our people are still creating. Our people are still dreaming. Our people are still restoring prayers and ceremonies that have connected us to all forms of life for millennia, for our entire existence. They tried to wipe us out, and we're out here thriving. And like that, when when we talk about what trajectory we need to go and how we need to deal with this challenge, I've had the honor and the privilege of being able to work on these issues both locally and starting my own community-led watershed planning project, but also internationally and helping to negotiate and advocate for Indigenous peoples in large climate negotiations. And at every level, it is becoming more and more clear. Our people hold the answers for how to help our world right now address and confront the impacts of man-made climate change. We have the answers, we have the historical memory, we have the dreams of something that can exist outside of this heteronormative capitalist system that has killed our communities, killed relationships, that is constantly a threat to the spiritual, mental, behavioral, emotional health of our people. And like we're in that way, we're seed carriers, right? Like we've been protecting these seeds for a very long time, and I think that's where my hope will always lie, because I know we will be successful when planting and caretaking of those seeds for the next generation. Yeah.
Thank you, Janene. Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing those solutions that we can look to for hope and courage. And Phoebe, welcome. I'm so glad you're here and you made it. So the question we were just working through was what Indigenous-led solutions are giving you hope, are a source of energy and motivation to keep at this work. But before you answer the question, I'd love you to introduce yourself to the crowd.
Thank you. Go ahead, see hope. To see. Good enough, sick. Good morning, everybody. My name is Phoebe Suina. Americana name, that's my English name. My Karis name is Geishpiats. And Geishpiats means like when the sun, right before it's coming up for the sunrise, the colors of that happen in the morning. Thank you all. And I apologize for being late. I didn't realize, juggling so many things, I didn't realize I was going to have to park about a couple miles away running here. So I apologize, I'm a little bit shiny and sweaty.
We can relate.
Right, but it was a good workout. It was my morning run and workout. Good to see everybody's smiling faces, and Neja for welcoming me, and thank you for your words that you just shared with everybody. And I apologize, I missed your opening. But I'm from the pueblos of Cochiti and San Felipe here along the Middle Rio Grande. And more I realize how special that is, how lucky I am, how honored I am. As you said, the seed carriers, we're lucky and blessed at Cochiti to be in a place where our ancestors have inhabited, stewarded, taken care of the seeds that are on that landscape, the cultural and traditional cultural properties on that landscape since time immemorial. And I often get asked, what does that mean? What is time immemorial? How heck, way back when? Forever in our traditional history. And I'm the owner of High Watermark, which is a small Native woman-owned, Pueblo-owned, me as a Pueblo member, environmental and engineering company here in New Mexico. And we've been working on a lot of issues related to climate change, flood mitigation, natural hazard mitigation. And more and more I realize that in the work that I do and working with a number of tribal communities as well as non-tribal communities here in New Mexico and in the Southwest, that as was shared earlier, the knowledge that we have as Indigenous peoples, especially here in New Mexico and where our Pueblo people have inhabited and stewarded, it's almost revitalizing those solutions, those ideas, those concepts of stewardship. And often, I see the trauma, I see the impact on our leadership both on the traditional and secular side, depending on whether or not we have Pueblos of traditional governance or those constitutional Pueblos that have accepted a constitution and have elections. There's been that ongoing trauma. And as a Pueblo woman, I also see that maybe even more. And I'm honored and humbled that often, because of, I guess, my knowledge on the traditional side, but as well as my formal education. I have a master's in engineering management. My undergrad is environmental engineering. So I can speak the talk of the lawyers, and I can speak the talk of the engineers, and I can speak the talk of the federal acronyms. And I've been in a meeting where a federal person or official just talked acronyms for a whole paragraph. And so, but that's a language, right? That's a language. That's the way they speak. So there's all of these different types of languages, whether I'm looking at something from an environmental aspect or from a traditional aspect or from a federal aspect, as we look at our pueblos and tribes have been long under-respected, devalued. Our knowledge and our expertise, to me, it just blows my mind why it is continuously pushed aside. When, since we've been here since time immemorial, our encyclopedia, our data, our database, our knowledge of what works, what doesn't work, why we don't do this, why we do this, all of that data and information. We have thousands of years of that data and information. Thousands. But yet here and throughout the United States, decisions are made based on 10 years of data, 20 years of data, 30 years of data, maybe 100 years of data. But that is so small of a time frame in comparison to what our indigenous people know about this land for thousands of years. And often I talk to scientists or technical professionals and say, okay, if you had a database of 1 year, would you use that, or would you use a database, say, of 10 times that? Or maybe 100 times that? They're like, yeah, 10 times that, of course, 100 times that. But then why don't we do that? Why are our tribal leaders, our knowledge keepers, those indigenous expertise and experts at the table? And I know I've said this a number of times, here in New Mexico, especially along the Middle Rio Grande, our Pueblo people, our ancestors, we are the first hydrologists. We're the first scientists, botanists, ecologists, architects, all the is in this landscape. So why don't we look to that knowledge? Why don't we look to that expertise? Why? And part of it, too, I think more and more as we look forward is we have to rely on that. We have to start to revitalize that. And this is something I constantly work on every day, is for us as Pueblo people, we don't write our language. We have to speak it. And that's critical to the life of the language. It's so critical. Because if I don't pass it down to my children, how does it continue to get passed down? And that is the key to that encyclopedia. That is the key to that database. If we don't have our living languages, we slowly lose those keys to those databases. And I'm still learning my language. Every day, I thank goodness for my partner. He's fluent. My kids, they're the ones that why I see that inspiration to keep going, keep working, keep trying. And then also here in the Pueblo country, I'm always reminded to be humble, to have that humility, because that reminds us that we're part of the system. I tell my Iwas, my children, we're all walking bodies of water. I love water. in engineering, once I was having difficulty learning electrical engineering and all the concepts and modeling and equations. And then all of a sudden I took a course on hydraulics and I was like, oh my God, it's right there and naturally in water. Water is so amazing. So I always tell my kiddos, I said, you know, we're all part of this whole hydrological cycle because every one of us, all of us, we're walking sitting bodies of water. We're part of that cycle. And so we are part of the environment, and that's the humility, that we're part of something greater than us. Whether we talk about our communities, our families, the world, the universe, we are part of that. So with that, I'm sorry I went on a little tangent there, but a lot of the work that I do is on working with pueblos and tribes on mitigation, resiliency, but also basic infrastructure. Again, we've been underfunded, underrespected. Many of our communities don't have access to drinking water, don't have access to wastewater, don't have access to good buildings, good homes. A lot of these federal programs, they provided funding, but in a way almost to colonize us, to continue that impact of taking away some of our culture and our practices. So I've been working to try to revitalize those, even through federal programs where like we accept money for the pueblos and tribes and working with them, but say, do it how you believe it should be done. And telling the federal government, this is an exercise of tribal sovereignty. If we're gonna build adobe structures instead of frame buildings, that is so important to keep that culture and that sovereignty and those traditional ways about our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Phoebe. And yeah, thank you, all of you, for just, covering so much ground as far as what Indigenous solutions are out there and giving us hope. I feel like climate justice is sometimes really broad, so just connecting some dots here. These programs, this technical assistance that Phoebe is doing, the work at the UN scale that Janene is involved in, the grassroots work that you're doing around seed revitalization, that's all climate justice work. And taking it one step bigger, when we talk about the movement of land back, that's why we're fighting for land back, is so that we can implement all of these solutions and grow them, scale them for our communities. And then as far as, my work, thank you so much for underscoring the knowledge that we have. I see it as one of my objectives in my work at NDN in the climate justice role to uplift our people as the experts, because we are. And so, and you can tell, because here's just a panelist of like true experts. But yeah, just to go down the list here for our questions. Here at NDN, we have a mantra that really, at least for me, really grounds me in the why, and also kind of, it's a question that I lead from. And the question is, what if the best times are ahead of us? And so we're here in this event, you can see the signage, Indigenous Futures. What to you all, what does that mean, that question? What if the best times are ahead of us? And what does it look like for your community or Native people at large to be in that place of living in true justice and equity? And please, whatever order.
I absolutely love that mantra. I think it reminds me of one of my favorite folk singers. His name's Phil Oakes, and he sings that the gypsy teller deceived you. You are whatever you choose to be. And when I think of that mantra of coming from a perspective of prosperity and abundance, it is very, very important that we come from that position of power. we are not victims. We are resilient. We are strong. We are educated. We got all. And I just want to highlight just how incredible I came in here and I got goosebumps. I have to be honest. I remember myself as a little girl coming to Santa Fe Indian Market, and they have the blankets. Does everybody remember that? Can I just say how res bougie this has become? And I love it. I love it. Yes. Thank you to Illuminative for just such an incredible atmosphere of bringing all, and coming again from that aspect of land back. When I think of land back, I don't necessarily think of it in the Western commodity. You know, I don't want that church back there. They can keep it. But, you know, to me, it's a reclamation. It's a reclamation of our traditional kinships. It's a reclamation of our traditional knowledge. It's a reclamation of our traditional seed practices, our relationship with the land, and the relationship with the people, with the water. You had described of how we all know we are made up of water. Nico Sun, Mother Earth, she is made up of water. We know these. And I also think of it in the sense of reclaiming the relationship to the land and with the people and with the seeds and with the water. But I also think of it as a reclamation of our future. And I acknowledge how far we have become. Like, listen to those drums. Isn't that incredibly powerful? You know, and I look towards the next 100 years and we will reclaim. We will reclaim. Yes, let's get up. I get excited for it. And it's the power of our words. It's the power of our minds. It's the power of each of us individually as well as collectively to bring that relationship back. And, you know, we know traditionally as Indigenous peoples, we live in a borderless global world. Yes, yes, we do. And that's something to celebrate. And we need to start thinking of very real solutions to the climate problem that we're having. Climate justice, you know, for the Jicarilla Apache Nation, it's been an ongoing issue. We had a nuclear bomb detonated under us in 1967 as a way for peaceful means to nuclear weapons. And we are still living with the impacts of that. And we need to start engineering actual solutions for that, not only within our communities, but with partnering with the scientific world. The knowledge is there, the engineering is there, and engineering doesn't necessarily have to come in a degree. You know, you're able to engineer a lot of these solutions, and we've seen this happen from all over the world. People are making these real life, and we need to focus especially on the issue of global warming. Petroleum products are non-sustainable. We are essentially burning ourselves out. But as opposed to we need to provide actual market solutions for Indigenous communities as well as the larger market to move into these products. Hemp grows per acre, helps 4 times more than a regular forest. It's the strongest, as I mentioned, fiber known to man. We have historical garments that date all back. It lasts. And we can start moving for these policies. We can start offering even these corporations tax incentives. You know, we do have to come to the realization that we do have to work with the rest of the world. We are in a closed system. It doesn't matter. But any way that we are, again, able to bridge those, because the climate, it does not matter what your beliefs are, It does not matter what religion you are, what gender you are, what any type of box you want to click. Doesn't matter. It's going to impact us all. And to the wealthy, it's coming. We already saw Sioux City completely flooded. And it is an economic impact. We have the economic incentive to address these. Because future generations, doesn't matter your socioeconomic status. The idea that you can go build your perfect environment or build a spaceship to get away, it's not reality. And we need to work together across these lines, across all party lines, across all peoples, across every single bit of division, and reclaim those traditional relationships. So, yay.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for highlighting, the need for local, regional economic models, regenerative economic models. Janene, this is your work. And you get to lead this work in the Southwest as the regional Southwest director. And so, what does an equitable, just future look like to you in 100 years? And what are you doing now to plant the seeds and build that?
I remember when I first heard Nick Tilson ask that question to a group of people. I think it was in one of your TED Talks before I knew about Indian Collective. And it really struck a chord, like thinking about that, because it was a simple way to pose to people the heartbeat of our movement, right? Like, the reason why we all wake up every day to fight the fights that we fight, to do the work that we do, because a lot of this is, since the rise of social media, I think things have gotten a lot more sexier when it comes to organizing and movement building, but a lot of it's unglorious, thankless, very hard work. But across our communities, we have people waking up every day, committing themselves to that work, and I think it's because we all kind of carry the same passion and fire and vision for our people, where we're like, for me, I drive through my homelands across the Navajo Nation, and I just envision beautiful homes that are safe and healthy for Diné families, gardens across all of our landscapes, restoring our fruit trees that we used to grow in the hundreds in Canyon de Chelly and many of our waterways. Restoring our cornfields and our traditional wild foodscapes, right? Like the areas where we cultivated our wild onions, our medicines, our roots, our other really healthy traditional foods. It reminded me of the conversations I've had with our traditional knowledge holders who still carry memories of antelope in our lands, of the last buffalo that left the Shiprock area, and what those animals meant to our people and our communities. And they're carrying those things so that we can remember, because we're now in a position to bring those cycles, heal those cycles, bring that ecosystem back into full production, and to restore it in a way. We're not doing it in a transactional way, right? We're not conserving spaces so that people can have a place to hike on weekends, but we're restoring our own understanding of Indigenous conservation, which is our life way. And there's so much hope now. I mean, I wanted to say in my previous question, but I didn't want to be too biased, because I'm working with Indian Collective now. But Indian Collective is one of those organizations that gives me hope, because they created a mechanism that for the first time is redistributing resources, financial loans, but as well as technical resources to those very people on the ground that are carrying this work and carrying these dreams. And when we look around now, Jen brought up how we're fancy now. Indigenous peoples are fancy now. Look at the spaces we're creating. Look at the people that have been on these panels here, hosted by Illuminative, talking about our increased representation across the board. We're here, right? We're here. We're here to stay. And so thinking about the people. Thinking about the people that we now have in power, right? We have Indigenous peoples in the top levels of government that know about decolonization, that know about dismantling settler colonialism, that know about rejecting the doctrine of discovery. And this is coming from generations of people who've had that education wiped out of our communities, or they tried to, right? And so when I think about those things, the work that we're doing in the Southwest is really focusing on holding our relatives who have been fighting for so long on the front lines, and holding on their own terms, like getting resources to them in ways that are actually going to help them not only achieve their missions, but also like really see those dreams that they've always had beyond their missions. To really come from a place of abundance instead of scarcity, to flip these power balances so that we're recognizing the beauty, the strength, the intelligence of our people, and we're no longer fighting for a place at the table. If we're not invited anymore, we're making our own damn tables, right? We're hosting our own conversations. We're creating our own spaces. We're building our own structures. We're creating our own processes, and we're doing it with our own researchers, with our own professionals, with our own subject matter experts, with our own grassroots organizers, and with our up-and-coming artists and healers and knowledge holders, and that's our future, right? Now when I think about that question, what if the best days of our people aren't in front of us? And I'm like, I think we're waking up every day living and the reality that the best days of our people is right now. Woo! And we're committed to that. We're committed to building that. And one of the things that is part of Indians' mission is that when we build a sustainable world, when we do this work and support the self-determination of our peoples, it creates a sustainable world for everyone. And I think that that's what makes our work not only powerful, but sacred in that way. Yeah.
Thank you, Janene. So many mic drops. Thank you for that. Phoebe, so you mentioned helping tribes and councils and nations develop resilience when it comes to the climate, when it comes to facing environmental injustice, and building environmental justice. When it comes to what are the best times ahead of us, what does that look like when you're doing your work building these climate plans for tribes, or with tribes rather? And also I just want to shout out Phoebe just for your work around flood mitigation, wildfire mitigation. We all know the fires that devastated our community this past spring, the largest wildfire in New Mexican history. So just thank you for that work. Thank you for guiding our people through this recovery time. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. It's actually work I love to do. Like, I'm passionate about, like I said, water. And I think for me, I just want to maybe take a little side road here. One of the things I think that I work on the most, or with the most, are with my family and my kids. And that's the work I constantly am juggling with the commitments at the Pueblo, as a Pueblo woman, as a Pueblo sister, daughter, and then with my business, and then the other pro bono work that I do on behalf of the state of New Mexico. I'm on the Interstate Stream Commission here in New Mexico. I'm also on the Renewable Energy Transmission Authority Board, and I'm also on the New Mexico Environmental Improvement Board. And each one has different responsibilities. But to your point earlier is, how do we get more Native perspectives, indigenous perspectives that are rooted in that perspective on these boards, in these key positions, like my good friend Secretary Holland. I've talked to her often and say, like, when she got elevated, I was actually worried for her, because then you become a target. You become a target, whether it's from the outside world or even within our own communities. And I still worry. I still worry about, what position she's in, just for her own well-being and safety. But one of the things I share with my kids, and I'll bring up a little story. So my daughter, she was going to the Carriage Children's Learning Center in Cochiti Pueblo. It's dual language, Montessori-based education, so it's English and Keres, our Cochiti language. The first part, primary, which is like elementary, is all immersion, 100% Keres. And we made that choice. We made that choice, and this is, I think, also an example of how much trauma our mothers, our grandmothers, aunts, uncles have been through the educational system, where I had family members say, why are you making that choice? You're educated, you've got your master's degree, and why are you sending your daughter to that school? And because I wanted her rooted, me and Rex, my partner, wanted her rooted in our way of life, to see the world through those lenses, that the language has a paradigm embedded in the language itself that allows her to see the world, describe the world, take in the world, take in all her experiences through those lenses. You know, I struggle, I'm still learning, but I wanted my kids to not have the struggle that I had. So fast forward is, you know, at the time it only went up to elementary, so I had to find another place for her. And she was, she was blessed to get into Albuquerque Academy, which is, you know, one of those preparatory schools. I struggled with the decision. I did go to Albuquerque Academy as well, but one of the things that I said to her is, if she goes and there is a conflict between traditional activities, family activities, she must choose our way of life. She must choose to be present. She must choose to take part and participate. And so I said, you know, is that gonna, you know, is that our deal? And she said yes. And she carries that. She carries that seed. When she was in her science class, she was just finished her 6th grade. She's starting 7th grade. She came home and she said, Mom, at science class, they asked us a question. They asked us a question, said, what about colonizing Mars? And what we all thought about that. So I'm sitting there like, oh, true Montessori teaching is like, okay, what do I say? Because I don't know what. So I said, honey, what do you think? What do you think about that? And she sat there for a minute and she said, like in our language, she was telling me, I don't understand that question. I don't understand, because why would I want to leave my mother? And she wasn't talking about me. She was talking about the Mother Earth. We have to take care of her. We have to make sure she's okay, not just for me. She was 11, but future generations. And those are the seeds, I think, that in the work that I do, our kids are looking at us. Our kids are watching. Even our nieces and nephews. We must be examples and role models and continue to carry ourselves with honor, with respect, with purpose, with all of those things, so that our future generations can see that and carry that also. And see that we can have our best days ahead of us, because they're going to be part of it. We're part of that. We're those seeds to then, I think about, you know, the Pueblo Revolt, you know, in August was the big, and I take my kids up to Horn Mesa, Henetcachu, normally in this time, to remember hundreds of years ago, our people came back here to our homelands, not out of fear, but out of seeking the strength from the land, seeking the spirits, the power, the knowledge, the strength. It's not a vision of scarcity. It was a vision of they knew where to go to get that abundance, to get that strength, to get that power to move forward. And so I think it's also that perspective of as I continue this work, sometimes I need that. Sometimes I need that reminder, because we're all human. We get pulled in many different ways, and running, jumping in the car, and I often see that also in the work that I do, is remembering that sometimes the easiest way, like to push the button to AC or push the button to heat your home, doesn't allow us to remember what is bringing that resource, or what's bringing that condition to where we are. And we, as I said earlier, we have to continue to work every day, whether it's in our professional career or even with our family and our kids and those younger generation around us. Because how we carry ourselves, that's how they're going to carry themselves. So, napatsankuchos, everybody here, do your best in whatever profession, however you're working with your families, with your kids, to keep that reminding. I always tell my sonny, wherever you're at, you're never alone. The spirits are all around us. Wherever, if we go 2,000 miles away, if we're on the other side of the world, they're still watching us. We're still part of this bigger thing that's greater than us. And we have to remember that and keep going forward. Keep waking up every day. Do your prayers. All of those little things we cannot forget. And we must also adhere to that in the work that we do. Thank you.
Good that one. Thank you, Phoebe. Yes, give it up. Well, again, just kind of grounding us in this moment we're in, with all this beautiful art surrounding us. How many of y'all are artists in the crowd? Raise your hand if you're an artist. All of you.
Everyone should have their hand up.
Everyone should have their hand up. So I think sometimes, we get a little held up, like, climate justice, climate work, like climate change, tribal resilience, nation resilience. Like, this is like big work, and as artists, how can we really plug in? And maybe we get too tripped up on, I'm just one person, I can't do enough, or I can't do all the things. But I'm curious to hear from all of you, and this is going to be a rapid response time. But what can artists, how can artists have a role in the climate justice work that you all do, or how can they use their work or platforms to uplift the work that you're doing, or even just collaborate? How can art and creativity and culture continue to move and keep move the dial when it comes to climate justice work?
I think I'm one of my favorite philosophers of the 20th century, Jose Ortega y Gasset, and he talks about the power of media to the masses. And essentially, one is able to fall in love with an artist, form a relationship with an artist, and this transverses all mediums of art. And in the fight for climate justice, I say all of you are on the forefront of this right now. Even in the art that you do, and the message and the power that each of you hold to communicate these very pressing issues that are facing our communities. And this extends to beading in traditional fashion, and expressing that we're still here, to film, art, photography. I have to give a shout out to Indian Collective. I absolutely love these billboards that they've been doing. I love them. But even on the highway, seeing things like reclaim kinship with land, And Diné had helped with that. I have to give a shout out. I apologize, I don't know the artist behind that, but you move me. You move me. And each of you have that power. And I want to encourage each and every one of you to work within your communities. Even if it's doing street art, it's appreciated. You know, I saw Ricardo Cate and I nearly chased him down. I love his comics, but you know, even from a political standpoint, you all have that voice, you all have that power, and I look forward to seeing all of you, and even those that you will teach one day. I hope it's taught, pass it down. You know, share it, share it, share it. And I look forward in the next 100 years to seeing all of you and the emerging artists that we have from throughout Turtle Island. And let's support each other. And let's support each other in getting a lot of these messages out. You know, let's work together, you know. In Jicarilla, we often say, "Kujuna goskli," which means may there be peace, beauty, and balance. And quickly wanted to add too, I have some seeds that I'd love to share with you all. We have some ancestral seeds also from South America. And grow in your homes, grow your dyes, you know, keep doing your micaceous pottery, your baskets. You are all serving an important part in this history. You are all making history. Thank you, Jennifer.
Janene?
I'm trying to remind myself it's a rapid round. I feel like I could talk about this aspect of the conversation all day because our artists have always been a constant in our communities, right? There was a time when we'd ask our communities that question and everyone would be like, we all create art, right? Like, we all are artists. Because that was embedded into how we taught, learned, and were a part of our communities. Everything from ceremonies to the prayers to the harvesting, all of our activities incorporate some type of craftsman creativity, like our artistry in our work and in our words. And so once these bells stop ringing, it's like the ever reminder the church is behind you, you know?
Because you're speaking truth.
But when we think about the barriers that we're having to overcome, you know, and I can see how kind of justice can seem like this, like, you know, its own type of topic or thing. But from an indigenous perspective, climate justice and working towards it doesn't mean doing anything different than what we have already been doing, which is restoring our communities, protecting our communities, restoring our relationship to our land and our water. They're really going for it. Isn't it beautiful?
I'm like, Janene, Yazzie, speak the truth.
It's a good moment to just shout land back at the Catholic Church.
But when we think about like the challenges that we have now and all the ways that our people have been imprisoned, one of the biggest prisons that has been built is the prison of our own mind, limiting what we think is possible, trying to convince us that our ways are too ancient, not relevant, no longer useful, limiting our own imaginations about what's possible for our families, our communities, and our nations. And it's our artists that still retain that power, that sacred power and responsibility of coming from that place of imagination, of breaking through those barriers and those limitations, and showing to us and their creations how to manifest and express different layers of emotions and complexities that when our people see this, from the jewelry that we wear as our protection, but also an expression of our clans, our families, our lands, to the pottery that we use, that still connect us to the ways that we use to prepare and store and feed our communities. All of these things, and the way, even the materials, and what that says about how long our connections have existed with our lands and with our sacred elements. All of these things are those tools and those seeds of our own liberation. And our artists are our healers. There are leaders in that. There are traditional knowledge holders in that. And what we need going forward is for us to just help plant the seed in more and more of our people, especially our younger people right now, to remember that they're artists too, and to find that passion, to find that thing that gives them that purpose, because that's how they become our medicine for our people and our journey forward, and that's how we create a sustainable world.
Give it up for Janene for speaking over these bells. All right, Phoebe. All right. Well, I don't know if I can speak over as well as Janene did, but I'll try here. And I know this is supposed to be rapid fire. One of the things that I want to share with for the Native artists is your inspiration as Native people. My grandma always taught me is Native people are tishas. You're strong. We're strong. And anything you make from your hands is blessed. It comes from a special place, being a Native American, being an Indigenous person, being a Pueblo. It comes from a special place. And I look back at pottery back in from the 1700s, 1800s, and I was just sharing with the state engineer of New Mexico and some of the interstate stream commissioners. What inspires you is your connection to the earth, to the mother, to the rain, to the clouds. And back 1700s, 1800s, I showed a pottery. And on that pottery had a depiction of what NOAA and the National Weather Service show as the hydrological cycle. We already knew that hundreds of years ago, and this artist memorialized that on a pottery. And then they said, well, if that's a one-off, I said, remember, in the 1700s, they weren't selling this pottery for art. This is the spirit of what came through. This is what that person painting wanted to share with the whole community. There were 4 or 5 other potteries that had those depictions of the hydrological cycle, where we have the rain, we have the rivers, the underground, us, the birds, everything as part of that hydrological cycle. And if you Google hydrological cycle on NOAA, you'll see the same picture. They're like, yay, we figured it out 10 years ago. But I share that example because I think back to my grandma on how indigenous people, the strength that we have and what we see. And as you as Native artists can continue that tradition, can continue to believe and create from a good place, from within, because we can all appreciate and share with others. It's another way of educating. I talked about the different languages. Me as an engineer, I can talk engineering language, but you as artists are sharing this visual and this creation with the world, with your communities. That is so essential for that full understanding of our connection to the environment, to climate, our relationships to each other. So Nampatsanko, just keep doing the best you can. Again, just remembering you're a special person. And your hands creating whatever you create is gonna help make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phoebe. I think that's a beautiful note to end on, and just, this is happening in Santa Fe. back to that place, land back.
Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. I got lots of
One last final plug. We were talking earlier about who defining who the experts are, and shameless plug for a book that we published. It's called Required Reading. Lily, can you hold up the book real quick? So this book has a ton of Indigenous knowledge in it. It's climate justice, adaptation, and building Indigenous power for the climate justice movement. We have books available over by the Illuminated Tent. These books are no longer available online, and so hurry on over there and get a few that are over there right now. Otherwise, we have a digital version online, as well as our coloring book. Do you mind throwing that up? Dreaming the Indigenous Dream, a really cool coloring book for intergenerational learning on climate justice.